what I'll do is turn off this network automation appliance. I'll drag an Ethernet switch to the workspace and run that on the GNS3 VM. I'm going to use that switch because the Docker appliances boot up very quickly, and I want the Docker appliance to get an IP address from the NAT cloud. Now note, you don't have to use a NAT cloud because Python and Netmiko are pre-installed. You don't need to update the appliance at all, and I'll show you that in a moment. Before I do that, I'll add a Cisco switch to the topology and connect it to this layer 2 switch. And what I'll do now is start up the topology. Now you can make your GNS3 topologies very pretty, you can enhance them, but for the moment I'm not going to bother with that. I'm simply going to open up a console to the Docker container and the iOS switch. So the Cisco iOS layer 2 switch is booting up, but the Docker container has already booted up. At the moment it hasn't received an IP address. So what I'll do here is configure the container to use DHCP. So I'm going to use Nano to edit Etsy network interfaces, and I'm going to scroll down and uncomment those 2 lines, and then I'm going to save the file. So I'll use cat to show you the output. Those 2 lines have been unedited, which means the Docker container will use DHCP to get an IP address from the NAT cloud. Again, you don't have to do it that way. You could manually configure the Docker container if you wanted to, but in this example, the Docker container has received an IP address through DHCP, as you can see over there. Now, because of the NAT cloud, the Docker container can also ping google.com. So if I do an apt-get update, now this is not necessary, but just to show you that Python is already pre-installed. The Docker container connects to the internet and updates references. So what I could do now is apt-get install Python, and notice what it's going to do. It tells me that it's already at the latest release. So it wasn't upgraded, and it wasn't newly installed. I didn't have to do that. Python is pre-installed on this Docker container. It's also got an IP address. So all I need to do now is configure the switch with an IP address in the same subnet. And because this is a switch, I need to do that on interface VLAN 1 as an example. So IP address 192.168.122, and I'll just choose 72 here. No shut. VLAN 1. Docker container should be able to ping the switch at this point, which it can. So what I need to do on the switch is enable SSH. That's because Netmiko uses SSH for connections. So I'm going to create a username of David with a password of Cisco. I'm going to give David privilege 15. And then I'm going to go on to the VTY lines, use login local, or rather login local, transport input all, create a domain name, so IP domain name cciepython.com, crypto key generate RSA. We need to generate keys for our SSH connections. I'll use a 1024-bit modulus. So that's been created, and I'll save the switch configuration. So at this point I should be able to SSH to that switch from the new Docker container, which I can, and I can log in with a password of Cisco. So David was able to SSH to the switch, so now we can create a Python script. So previously, to install Netmiko, you would have had to run these commands: apt-get update, apt-get install Python, install additional software, install pip, install cryptography, and then install Netmiko. We don't have to do that because it's already installed. So what I'm going to do is take the simple script and use it to connect to the switch and run the command show IP interface brief. So I'll create a script called netmiko1.py, paste the configuration in. If you're not sure what this is doing, please have a look at my other Python videos, which explain Netmiko in a lot of depth. So notice Python netmiko1.py. It's connecting to the switch. Now there is a warning about expiring in the future, so you may need to update software at a later date. But notice the command is run. Those are the interfaces on the switch. So show IP interface brief. Notice there the interfaces on the switch. Now we could run some other commands here. So let's copy that and do a show version. And save the file. I'll clear the screen and let's run it again. Okay, so here's the show version output. We can see that it's a Cisco IOS V layer 2 switch. That's the version of software, 15.2. But we didn't get the show IP interface brief, and that's because I forgot to print the output. So let's do that again. So let's print the output of the first command and then the output of the second command. I'll clear the screen and run the script again. So there you go. It's connected to the switch. There's show IP interface brief. There's show version. Now you can obviously make the script a lot nicer in the same way that you can make your GNS3 topologies a lot nicer. So as an example, I could print sending command 1, copy that, paste that in, sending command 2, and run the script again. Now in my Python courses, I show you a lot more detail of how to improve your scripts. But for this simple setup, notice there's sending command 2, there's sending command 1, and there is the output of show IP interface brief and show version of the switch. So this new network automation appliance in the GNS3 marketplace makes it very easy to get started and up and running with Netmiko, Napalm, Pyntc, and Ansible. In my Python course, I show you how to use Netmiko, Napalm, and Pyntc in a lot of detail. If you're interested, go to cciepython.com to get access to the course. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I want to wish you all the very best.